All right, let's set the scene here. It's the summer of 1940. Hitler has absolutely steamrolled across Europe, and there's just one nation left standing in his way. This is the incredible story of how a small group of pilots, backed by a revolutionary secret system, literally changed the course of World War II.
After France fell, the situation was just beyond grim. Think about it. Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Belgium, the Netherlands, they were all gone. Britain was completely on its own, an island bracing for a storm that felt absolutely inevitable. The whole world was just watching and waiting.
So Germany had this huge problem, right? The English Channel. You can't just march an army across that much water, not when the powerful British Royal Navy is patrolling it. So Hitler knew he had to get past Britain's defenses. But the key wasn't on the sea. The real fight, the one that would decide everything, was going to be fought in the sky.
And that brings us to this critical idea: air superiority. Before a single German invasion ship could set sail, their air force, the Luftwaffe, had one job and one job only: completely wipe out Britain's Royal Air Force, the RAF. If they could control the skies, the invasion was on. If they failed, well, the whole plan would just fall apart.
But here's the thing. Britain had an ace up its sleeve. Yeah, the German Luftwaffe had more planes, more experienced pilots, but the RAF had something totally new, something the Germans knew almost nothing about: an invisible shield that was about to change all the rules.
The RAF pilots would go down in history as the few, but they weren't fighting alone, and they certainly weren't fighting blind. They had this incredibly powerful ally, a brand new, fully integrated air defense network. It was called the Dowding System, named after the man who masterminded it, Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding.
And this is just a beautiful breakdown of how it worked. It was a three-step process. First, you detect. A network of radar stations along the coast could spot German planes coming from miles away. That info, plus sightings from observers on the ground, was all sent to a central command hub. Then came step 2, direct. Operators would analyze all that data and scramble the exact number of fighters needed, sending them to the precise location and altitude to meet the enemy. Which leads to the final step: destroy. No wasted fuel, no flying around hoping to find the enemy, just pure, deadly efficiency.
So armed with this amazing system, the RAF got ready for the fight of their lives. And the Luftwaffe, totally confident in their superior numbers, started a massive, relentless campaign to just smash Britain's defenses into the ground.
The whole thing rolled out in phases. First, in July, they started hitting ships in the Channel. But then, in August, things got serious. The Germans launched an all-out blitz on the RAF's infrastructure, their airfields, their command centers, and even those critical radar stations. The pressure was just immense, and it did not let up.
And this right here, this was the crisis point. By early September, the German strategy was absolutely working. The RAF was being bled dry. Their airfields were just fields of craters, planes were being blown up on the ground before they could even take off. And the pilots, they were completely exhausted. We're talking a few more days, just a few more days of this, and Britain would have lost control of its skies. The invasion would have been next.
But then, right when the RAF was about to break, the Luftwaffe made a catastrophic mistake. A single decision that completely changed the momentum and, you could argue, the entire outcome of the war. So what happened? Well, frustrated with how stubborn the RAF's resistance was, and as payback for a tiny British raid on Berlin, Hitler and the German High Command changed targets. They stopped hammering the airfields and the radar sites and instead started a massive bombing campaign against London and other cities. This was the beginning of what we now know as the Blitz.
I mean, on the surface, that sounds terrifying, right? Bombing cities seems like it would crush morale. So, why on earth was this pivot from military targets to civilian ones such a colossal blunder for Germany? Because it gave the RAF the one thing it desperately needed more than anything else: breathing room, a break. With the Luftwaffe now focused on London, those battered airfields suddenly had time to repair their runways. The exhausted pilots and ground crews got a chance to catch their breath and regroup. It shifted the fight away from that critical breaking point, and it actually allowed the Dowding system to work even better, defending a more predictable target. And as the RAF was getting that crucial second wind, it's so important to remember that the few who were defending Britain, well, they weren't all British. They came from all over the world, all united against this one enemy.
Yeah, this was a truly international effort. Flying right alongside the British pilots were brave men from Commonwealth nations like Canada and Australia, and pilots who had literally escaped their own conquered countries like Poland and Czechoslovakia. Their skill and their courage were absolutely vital to the defense.
So you put it all together, that critical German mistake, combined with the resilience of an international force of pilots, and that game-changing secret system, and it sealed Germany's fate in the skies over Britain. And the consequences of that failure were just enormous.
And the result of that victory? Well, it was simple, and it was massive. Because the Luftwaffe couldn't get control of the air, Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of Britain, had to be called off, postponed, and then eventually scrapped altogether. Britain was safe.
This victory wasn't just about defense. It was the first major turning point of the entire Second World War. It was the moment the tide really began to shift. See, up until this point, Hitler's war machine had seemed completely unstoppable. The Battle of Britain shattered that myth of invincibility. It was proof, for the first time, that the Third Reich could be stopped, and that sent a powerful message of hope to the rest of the world.
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What if the Luftwaffe had just kept hitting those airfields for a few more days? What if that incredible Dowding system had never been invented? The world we know today could be a radically different place.